Chapter 7. Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent and for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. But I speak this by permission, and not of commandment. For I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not thy wife depart from her husband. And if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? But as God hath distributed to every man, as the Lord hath called every one, so let him walk. And so ordain I in all churches. If any man called being circumcised, let him not become uncircumcised. If any called in uncircumcision, is any called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's free man. Likewise also, he that is called being free is Christ's servant. Ye are bought with a price. Be ye not the servants of men. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called therein abide with God. Now concerning virgins I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose, therefore, that it is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man so to be. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. But, and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. But this I say, brethren, the time is short, it remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. There is difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I speak for your profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. But if any man thinketh that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will. He sinneth not. Let them marry. Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, and hath so decreed in his heart that he will keep his virgin, doeth well. So then he that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better. The wife is bound by the law as long as her husband liveth, but if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she so abide after my judgment, and I think also that I have the Spirit of God. Chapter 7 has represented a huge challenge to a number of people. We need simply to understand that by and large what Paul is talking about, or the people to whom he is talking about here, is in answer to a question from the Corinthians, and they want to know if they go off serving, some of the men, some of the women go off serving to spread the church to other areas. Should they get married before they go? Should they take their husband or their wife with them? How do they do this? And they've had a bunch of specific questions, and that's what Paul's trying to answer here. And this is not this was culturally specific things for the time. This is not necessarily specifically applying to us, although some of it obviously should. Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, so these are the questions that he had given him. It is good for a man not to touch a woman, in the context in which they asked the question. Okay, that you got to understand that thou concerning the things whereof you wrote to me is the condition. And we don't have that condition, but it's fairly easy to figure out what it is. If you got somebody who's going out on missionary service, it is better that before he goes, he has nothing to do with being married or any kind of fornication or anything, that he goes honorably and purely on his service. Okay? Nevertheless, verse 2, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. So if you're going to be gone for months or longer, okay, it is best for you to have a husband or wife to go with you for at least this particular point of an intimate relationship, than to have nobody to go with you and suffer from the temptations, which are very, very strong for many people. Then verse 3 and 4, how people should relate to one another, how husbands and wives should relate to one another, and a little bit on verse 5. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. In other words, when you marry, you are there for each other. You're not two people, two separate entities, sort of traveling in the same general direction. You are a unit. You are to behave like a unit. You are supposed to give the other person all the care they need, and you're supposed to think of them before you think of yourself. A lot of people don't do that. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. You are supposed to put the other parties, your husband's or your wife's needs, desires, hopes, dreams, whatever, ahead of your own. Both of you are supposed to do that at the same time. It is not a case of give and take, it's a case of give and give. Defraud not one another, verse 5. That means don't shortchange one another. Don't be miserable and mean and withholding of love and affection one towards another. That is a great sin. And he says in verse 6, but I speak this by permission and not of commandment. In other words, you should love one another because you wish to, not because you're ordered to. That following the commandment because it's, you don't got any choice, that doesn't help at all. That isn't what the Lord wants in a relationship. He wants giving. And then he talks about how they might look on the unbelieving husband, because this was another question that they asked. Should believers leave the unbelievers? Should a husband who has an unbelieving wife put her away, divorce her, whatever? And he says here, look at verse 14 and verse 16. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now they are holy. Okay? You have holy children. Your marriage is holy. Okay? You made the commitment to love one another. Honor